Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate you all coming to a subject that I kind of find personally fascinating, but we've all been involved in it for a long time. My name is Kevin Dayton. I first began reporting on the Honolulu Rail project in 2011, if you can believe it or not. It was a full-time job for me at the Honolulu Star Advertiser, and I've sort of off and on, part-time, been continued to write about the project to one degree or another for ever since then, pretty much, with a couple of interruptions. I've been, let's see, just if I look familiar to you, it's because I've been around for a really long time. I've been working for the Star Advertiser, for the Honolulu Advertiser, for a Hilo newspaper, for Associated Press, and now, of course, for Civil Beat, which is a pleasure. And again, thank you for coming. And I'm going to do a quick introduction for Roger Morton. Roger is the director for the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Transportation Services. He is a transportation professional whose Hawaii career spans over 40 years. He serves on the boards of the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation, the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the American Public Transportation Association. He knows about everything there is to know about rail, just about. He denies it, but it's true.
It's true.
And I'll pass this off to Marcel.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Marcel Honore, and I basically took the baton from Kevin at one point in early 2013 when he stepped away from the beat for a while. It's actually when I moved to Hawaii, so I have Kevin in part to thank for that. And, you know, since then, we've been two of the main journalists, I'd say, who've been covering this project between us at the Star Advertiser when we were both there. When I moved over to Civil Beat, and then we were kind of competitors, and now we're both over here at Civil Beat, and yeah, so it's been rail, you know, coming over here. It's really been a meal ticket for me, frankly, with all the news and everything that's been happening. Before moving to Hawaii, I was a reporter for a while in California. I worked at the Desert Sun in Palm Springs. Before that, at the start of my journalism career, I spent some time in D.C. working as a correspondent, as well as Caracas, Venezuela. So that's a little on me. I'd like to introduce John Nouchi, who is our other panelist, and John currently serves as the Deputy Director, the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Transportation Services. And he's worked in transportation in Hawaii for 25 years. He holds a degree in urban planning from the University of Southern California, the Trojans. No comment. And a certificate in Olelo, Hawaii from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just go right into it. Just a quick update on kind of where we stand with rail. So it's been more than a year since the first segment of what is now an 18.9-mile rail line opened for business, with service running from East Kapolei to Halawa and Aloha Stadium. The next rail segment is expected to open, and maybe we'll cover this, but sometime in 2025 was the latest word. It'll be extending service past the Honolulu Airport and past the Pearl Harbor Station to Middle Street, which a lot of you might remember has come up a lot in conversations in the past. And this will represent an additional 5 miles and 4 stations. And most recently, as a lot of you know, HART, Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation, finally awarded what turned out to be a $1.66 billion design build construction contract this month to extend rail to what is being called the Civic Center. And that's the station at the intersection, or just past the intersection, of South Street and Halakavila. And yeah, HART has been trying to award that contract for, I'd say, about a decade, several times, right? And the difficulties with moving that forward has really been integral to a lot of the struggles that we've seen over the years. You may all recall that the city had to essentially basically lop off the last mile for the rail line to Ala Moana Center, and that was to reduce the cost of the project and really keep it going. That was a bit of a disappointment, but we're not here to dwell on that decision. We're here more to talk about the operations of rail, which falls under Department of Transportation Services, and a little bit as it intersects with the bus system that feeds into rail, than we are about the the ongoing saga of rail construction. So transit operations is what Roger and John are involved in. Although Roger does sit on the Heart board, so we can get into some heart-related things on that basis. And I'll kick it over to Kevin.
Okay, so to open, we wanted to sort of throw this open to you two because you suddenly got dropped on you a responsibility in DTS for operations of a system that's really unlike anything the city's done, certainly in my lifetime, and maybe in many long time. And in addition to that, it's a different kind of system because I think we are the only driverless system in the United States operating today, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm curious as to what your take is on whether the technology and the promises that were made by the contractor have lived up to expectations, and if there have been glitches, maybe talk about those for a minute.
Sure. First, thanks to Civil Beat for organizing this forum. Kevin said that this has been a good meal ticket for him since 2011. Marcel. Actually, for me, I joined the department for my first time. This is my second time at DTS, but I joined the department in 1974. And that meant that I was there with Frank Fossey when we thought about having rail the first time. I was there with Jeremy Harris and Frank Fossey for the second attempt, and I'm still here. So.
And the same carpet is still in some of the offices that Roger returned to.
I spent most of my career after that, after getting my degree in transportation. I spent most of my career at the bus, where for the 15 years before I came here, I ran the Oahu Transit. So to your question of how is this, that now we have this new rail system thrown at us. And I guess one of the reasons that they decided to do that was that when the charter was amended, there was a feeling that a transportation system is not a rail system, is not even a bus system, but it's a complete system. And so it made more sense that since DTS was controlling the bus system, controlling the routes, controlling the schedules, it just made more sense that we would also coordinate that with the operation of the rail. I'll go a little bit more, and I'll pass it to my good colleague on my right here. But, as to the question of is it operating the way that was promised to us, and the answer is no. It's operating substantially better than the way than how it was. And let me explain what some of the parameters of that are. With our contract with our great partner Hitachi Rail, we operate on a performance-based contract where if they do really good, they can actually get an incentive. We haven't quite got there, but our standards are so high that we measure on a percentage basis of how well they're operating. And for the last year, we operated at a 99.2% level. Now, what does that mean for a customer? There's probably about 50 parameters that come up to make that number. But I'll take one that's really important in transportation, and that is how reliable and how well does a schedule go. So as I say, I ran the bus for many years, and it's very important on the bus too to have good schedule adherence for the riders. And when I was there, we said that a bus was on time if it was within 5 minutes of its expected time. And we were able to do that. The best I ever did during COVID was we did that at about 74%. Now we do it at about 70% of the time on the bus. Now for rail, it's a little bit different. Rail's automated. Rail has its own separate guideway. And so we can do better. And how good do we do? For number one, we measure that schedule adherence in seconds. And so we say that the train is on time if it's within 10 seconds of its expected schedule. 10 seconds is a short time. And how reliable are we? For the first year, we did 99.4% of the time we were on time. Now we do give a couple of things that we don't hold against our contractor if something happens that's really beyond their control, like there's a baby carriage that the doors won't close or somebody holds it open or something, we do that. But just to give you an idea of how this system works, let's assume that we got behind by, I don't know, a minute on our schedule.
Horrors that has, yeah.
Automatically, without human intervention, they might shave 3 seconds at a station, or they might go 3 miles an hour faster. And so within about a 10-minute time frame, they'll be back on time. That's how automated this system is. I don't want to monopolize this, so I'm going to turn it back to the moderator for a question for John.
Sure. I mean, and I don't want to be a killjoy, but there were a couple of mishaps in the first year, and maybe we could talk about those just briefly to give us an idea. So I was looking back at some old articles, and I think there was a train stopped in November. There was one that reversed direction and began going in the opposite direction. Talk about that for a second. I mean, and can we expect that?
Sure. I think when we talk about mishaps, right? Let me couch this by saying that everything we do right now, I think we are under the microscope. As a city, we have an operator, Hitachi, but really, when something happens on Skyline, it just reverberates through the media, through social media. And so we walk a very tight line. And if Skyline is a tightrope, we walk that tightrope, that everything we do comes under scrutiny. So the fact that I think we can look back on our first year and say that this is the first time the city has had to oversee such operations, and that our contractor is learning with us. So we're learning pretty much how to exist in our relationship with our oversight of the operations. And the fact that maybe there are 3 memorable things that ping to mind, I think that's pretty good. I mean, we look at things that happen that air, in our daily lives, right? And I'm not saying we should expect things to go wrong, but I think it's a challenge for us to look at the last year and say that it wasn't a success when we had 99.2% availability. I mean, I think it's hard for a regular person to go and do 99.2% things of their day correctly. So to that end, I mean, I can address the 2 or 3 things you brought up, and it is everything that contributes to learning. The first service interruption we had, it really dealt with the fact that the train safety system believed that there was some intrusion onto the track. So, of course, the safest thing to do at that point is stop. Unfortunately, it happened to stop in an area where the train was passing through a crossover. So it's an area where a train can go from one side track to the other. And while it was down there, the battery systems on board the train did deplete, because this was a first time. Everybody kind of sprung into action, trying to figure out what, troubleshoot at that time. The batteries got depleted and the brakes stayed applied. So we had to manually, our operator had to manually disable each set of brakes on every wheel set on the train, and then after the service day, actually come and tow the train out. So that was a lesson learned, first disruption. And I think the thing that you brought up secondly was, again, we had a perceived safety issue in the automated system, and you talked about the train went the wrong way. I think fundamentally we think of trains like cars. We think of it like there's a lane going this way and there's a lane going that way. And while that's generally true on the train, there isn't really a wrong way on the track. The fact that trains can actually travel both directions, it doesn't mean that the train went the wrong way, but in sorting out the service, the trains can actually travel both ways. If there's a stall, it can use crossovers and, much like on a highway, pass on either track. So I wouldn't say that was, I think, living on an island, we only know what we know, and not too many people were around when we still had railroads here, and even those were single-track railroads, but we use all the tools we have available when we have a service disruption. And the fact that the train went backwards on a track that traditionally went westbound, it's not an error. It was actually exactly as it was supposed to operate. But like again, the echo chamber of social media comes back and, oh my God, the train went the wrong way. People could die, and everybody gets unnecessarily heightened up about those kinds of things. And I think that's where we as a city could do better to kind of teach people like, hey, this is completely normal. Everything did exactly what it was supposed to do, but nobody really wants to hear that. They want to hear the spicy version. Like the train was out of control going the wrong way, you know? But we had something similar happen, what is it now, last week? A couple weeks ago? Yeah, last week. And it was that similar train was going through the crossover, the batteries had depleted. And I think that is something that has led to a refinement in standard operating procedures that we're working through. So in our first year, we've definitely learned some lessons. But I think the fact that we reported a pretty successful year in terms of being available, being reliable to the people that we serve, I think I'm willing to pat ourselves on the back and pat our operator on the back and say, hey, we got more of that good stuff to come.
Yeah, let me just add a couple of things. Why we go backwards on that? So that, you know, our train is automated, and for us that means that our protocol is half of the trains have an employee on them, and half of the trains do not. It's an unattended level 4 automation that no other system in the country operates that way. There are many other systems in Asia and in Europe that operate in that mode, and in Canada, but none in the U.S. So the train that stopped because the control system wasn't sure that there wasn't something on the track. The protocol is the train cannot go forward without an employee on the train. That's just a safety protocol. So in that case, the central control of the train system decided we'll go back to the station, we'll pick up an employee, the employee will go to the front, and then our protocol is we can go forward as long as one of our operating employees is there to monitor to confirm that it wasn't. Now they can look with video. We have 1,600 cameras in the system in real time. They can look at the track, they can do all of those things, but the protocol is an employee must give the go-ahead. And that's why they went back. Now, where did we fail, or I think where we probably could have done a better job is we could have told the customers on the train that this train is going to go back to pick up or to do something. And so people were startled. I think the message was the train is about to start. And it did, but it went in the direction that they weren't expecting. So that was a startling event for our customers. And yeah, the failure that I think that we made was we didn't do a good enough job in communicating with our passengers that this irregular thing is going to happen, to just, so that they were either braced for the reverse direction or whatever. And yeah, of course, in this day and age, that immediately led to some postings on social media that, hey, what's going on? And
I think everybody here in this room right now, you have a bit of party trivia in your back pocket that, hey, trains can go either way, And did anybody do Great Aloha Run this year? Nobody?
Great Aloha Run.
Great Aloha Run. That was the first time we actually ran Skyline very early in the morning. We ran it from, I think, the 3 to 4 a.m. time frame. And actually, we had a quite interesting modified pattern there where we operated trains in both directions on both tracks. And so our operations partners would take people up to the proper track, and the train would go both ways. We had two trains running in both directions. So again, there is no wrong way on a track. There is a general sense of direction, but we can go any way.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. That really helps. I think I'd like to get into ridership for a minute, because that's something that you all know. You're watching social media; everybody's talking about it. Yep. And I had the opportunity to take my kids on the train this past summer, and we chose to do it on a Sunday, but it was basically empty. I mean, with a handful of people, which probably isn't surprising for a Sunday. And my recollection is that there was a projection early on that maybe by a year into operations, the ridership would be maybe 10,000, something
8,
like that. 8,000?
Yeah.
Okay. And today, if I understand it right, it's maybe 3,000 on weekdays and 2,000 on weekends?
Well, let's see. On Wednesday, what is today? Today is Thursday. So Tuesday, was it Tuesday or Monday? Yesterday we had 4,100 passengers. That's a lousy number for a rail system, but it's better than what we've been doing. And that's, but people focus on ridership, but when you ride transit, I mean, why do people take transit? They take it to get to work. That's the first reason. They take it to get to school. That's the second reason. They take it to do other things. Those are the third reasons. And the reality is that when we're operating a train from East Kapolei to our closed down stadium, there aren't a lot of jobs in that corridor.
Well, job centers. There are a lot of jobs. But our concentrated job centers lie beyond where we operate right now to the east.
So 4,000 people a day. That's about 250 people per hour. We are going to do better than that. That's a pitiful number to build a rail system. Now, why did we do that as a city? Why did we start out in the boonies and connect places that didn't have lots of potential for ridership? And most of that is dictated by the fact that running a rail system requires us to have 44 acres of rail maintenance facilities, tracks where we can park the trains, facilities where we can fix the trains, and all of those things. And over my even going back to the Fosse days, there wasn't really 43 or 44 acres available any closer. So you can't start in downtown. Well, we could have waited and just put that in, and maybe we should have waited until we got to Airport or to Middle Street before we even opened the first segment. We could have done that, but the decision was made that we didn't do that. I look at the way we operate now as essentially not so much as a mobility option, but as a demonstration. Now, how did we get to 8,000? Because I think I'm the one responsible for coming up with that number.
And I may have inspired that projection too.
And really, what we did do was we looked at our bus ridership in the corridor, and I think we had 10,000 or more in the corridor. And so we had some very sophisticated computer programs that looked at that as well. But you got to understand that at this point, we haven't taken anything from the bus system away. We have added things to the bus system to make it connect. But we haven't taken away those fast rides that people get coming in from the west side on the bus, and that was probably a flaw in the thing, because a lot of people have tried Skyline and they found that I can get on an express bus and it's faster than it is to get on Skyline and then get off Skyline at Halava and transfer to a bus at Halava. We've done the best we can to make that bus connection good, but it's not as fast as it would be that if you just got on that morning express bus and came into town.
I think the thing that we do want to focus on, though, we were very heartened to see that since August is a time with Beat the School Jam, and people can restart their new habits, right? And DTS and our State Department of Transportation partners always make a push like, hey, August is a good time to reset your commute. And the hardest thing is when you fall into a habit is to start something new. And we're heartened to see that our ridership has been up since in that very short time this week, 22% over where we were for the similar week last year. And we've seen the largest gains in like Leeward Community College, for example. They're definitely they have a station that's pretty much dedicated just for their campus. But we see the pockets of ridership that we have that know the Skyline product, that love the Skyline product, and depend on Skyline. We have a group we call the Skyline Aunties. It's about 12 to 20 aunties who all meet together in the morning at the UH West Oahu Keone'ai station, and they all work at the airport. So they park and ride, or they carpool and ride, and they all get on that. They get off at Halava, and right now they get on the Route 20 and finish that last leg. And I'm ecstatic thinking for them that by the end of next year, they're going to just be able to get on at Keone'ai UH West Oahu and then just be able to get off in the airport. And I think they're really excited. And one of them told me that, I was going to retire, but I want to be around for this. So, I mean, that's the kind of quality. And we found new pockets of ridership of people that we didn't know before, such as we have our Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard people. And they're the ones who are apt to take e-bikes or bikes. And that's one of the things. On board the trains, when you ride them, you'll see kind of a plethora of people just having devices, scooters, wheels, anything electric or non-electric. Pearl Harbor is one of them. We also developed a new group of ridership with the Camp Smith people. So, you know, these ridership pockets and the fact that we see these students now. I took a ride yesterday. I took the EPA on a tour of our system. Leeward Community College, definitely, you can see that the ridership is up. And it looks like our daily average for them compared to last year is up by about 200 passengers. So, you know, we're getting to the point where the ridership is developing. And even in bus transit, the development of ridership is slow. It happens over many years. And if you guys are interested, maybe I'll have a pauhana and a TED Talk about how transit in older Honolulu influenced what we have today, but that's not for right now. But to that end, you know, a lot of people have come and ridership has become like the villain conversation of why people are against Skyline. And when people come up to me, and I think it's a little out of place, but in public, and I'm eating dinner with my parents, and they start banging on the table and like, hey, yeah, why is the ridership so low? So what, you know what I tell them? Rather than fight, I say, what do you think is good ridership? Well, it's not good. I'm like, okay, well, what do you think that is? Give me a number. And they generally don't have a number, but everybody's bought into this idea that ridership is low. And yes, it's lower than we'd like it to be. Ultimately, we'd like it to be high. But understand the nearly 11 miles we have right now, and I've already said it once, it does not extend into large job centers that we have, and we see better things on the horizon. But we are not unique in that sense. Every municipality, every large area that's open rail, they started with something. You know, we even see well-developed, or, you know, not even super well-developed, but in the Puget Sound, Seattle area, they're building a line 2. So they're building the beginning of their second line. And that goes from Bellevue, and it goes to Mercer Island. It doesn't even go to Mercer Island, but it's supposed to cross over to Mercer Island and into downtown Seattle. Does not do that right now. So guess what? The ridership is poor on the disconnected segment, but they are supposed to end up in downtown Seattle. So it's the same thing. They're getting persecuted for bad ridership, but fundamentally, this whole year of learning, I would not give that back. I mean, we learned how people use our system. We learned how to have good oversight of our system. Our operator developed, kind of like was allowed to flex a little bit at a good time when, you know, I think I would not have traded this demonstration period, as Director Morton said. I think it was a good time for our public to finally like touch, feel, ride this thing that we have argued about for over 55 years in this city. And I think that I don't think I would have felt that it was conscionable that we have a system that we could have opened, but we didn't.
Okay, and I'm shocked to report that we're halfway through this event, so we'll try and thank you for your answers, but we're going to move it along a little bit.
So,
Marcel?
I think because John touched a lot on what my next question was going to be, who's writing it, and I guess we could get more into the the granular details of which stations, but you already hit on Leeward Community College. That was going to be my next question, but because you brought up, I wouldn't trade this year and the experience for the world. I think it'd actually be a better pivot point for you to ask about operations costs and kind of balancing, right?
Sure. I mean, and I'd appreciate some clarification because my numbers may be stale or maybe just wrong, but I came away from some of the HART board meetings with the impression that annual operating costs would be in the $80 million a year for this segment. And obviously it would increase to not quite double that, I guess about 150 when the system is up and completely running. And so I guess, well, the first question is, I guess, is talk about fares and the role of recouping fares in terms of paying for the system and the operations. I don't imagine that's even a significant amount of money at this point.
No, it's not in comparison to operating costs. Let's start with mass transit in general in the United States, right? That it's very seldom a moneymaker. In fact, it's never a moneymaker. the most successful system in the country would be New York City. And that would be less than 50% of the operating costs in New York City are covered. And New York City is half of the American transit market. So it is in a class all by itself. But that's probably the most successful one in terms of that. Historically, in Hawaii with the bus, we've tried to operate between 30 to 35%. And we were able to do that until we got smacked by COVID. And when COVID occurred here and around the country, we started putting out public awareness campaigns, basically telling people, unless it's absolutely essential, don't ride public transportation. And guess what? A lot of people took our advice, and they didn't. So our ridership dropped during the throes of COVID, it dropped to 10% of what it was, because we went out and we said the nurses are heroes and the others are heroes that are riding. But during that period, we lost a lot of ridership. Now we have come back to, I think that we're, in our bus system, we're about 70, 71, 72% of where we were. And that probably contributes to our issue over ridership projections too, is that our ridership projections were kind of made, if you look back, in a pre-COVID type environment. So that's where we're at. So why is that? Is that a lot of it is that, after telling people don't ride, a bunch of people went out and changed their habits, and they bought cars, and they just changed their habits on that. A lot of people stopped riding entirely because they telecommute. They work at home now. We learned how to do that during the COVID emergency. And so the world has changed a little bit since, in the last 5 years. Now, it takes a long time when we're in that section of how do we get people back.
And, when you look at that calculus, right, like Roger said that we were carrying 10% of our ridership through COVID, we were still operating 80% of the service that we did. Yeah. Now, the calculus of that is, could we afford not to? The people that relied, the essential workers that relied on this service to kind of keep our society functioning, we owed it to them to operate that service. And plus, we had to operate with 6 feet requirements. So, when you think about it, we always have to think about transit. I think people always come at us and they say, hey, how come you're not making money? Like, why is that? I'm like, well, we're never intended to make money. This is a public service. Yeah. We don't expect other facets of government to make money. And in fact, we're prohibited by law, by ordinance, to charge more and make a profit on government services. So I think that's where we want to kind of couch this, that we're never going to reclaim all of our costs, or if we did, that would be great, but we are providing a service.
Yeah, and where we're going, I mean, you get down to the rationale of why are we doing all of this. And yes, we're doing, for the last number of years, we've all known that our island is going to continue to grow. Our west side, we have designated that as our growth area. We're not, the freeway expansion, the last of it is going on right now with a very small 1-lane expansion around Farrington High School. That's the last big expansion we're going to have.
And we haven't kept up with the expansion that we need to do.
And we're, our general plan has another 20,000 people in Ho'opili. It has another 5,000 people in Koa Ridge. And growth is not going to stop. So we're in a situation where our highway capacity is not going to change. Our residential capacity is going to change. And yes, we have the after COVID impacts, which I acknowledge. But I think that, the time frame for rail is measured in decades, if not even longer than decades. And when we look back 20 years from now, 25 years from now, I think history will say that Honolulu made the correct decision in investing so much in rail.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think it is a fair question to ask. So what are you going to do to get the ridership up? Or is there a strategy that you believe will actually get it up? And that should apply to both the bus and rail. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where DTS is going to have to make some tough decisions. Now, the transit industry is very insular. We all know each other. Like, we all know our nearest municipalities. But everybody has a similar story. In that sense, after COVID, we were not unique. And so we looked at the other agencies and how they've had to reinvent their services. And you know what we've discovered is the only agencies that have reclaimed to 100% their ridership of where they were before COVID or have exceeded their pre-COVID ridership are the ones that reinvented their entire system such that they kind of cut off a lot of unproductive legs and reinvested those buses and drivers and vehicles into the most frequent corridors. That is an unpopular decision to make.
Yeah.
That is a very unpopular decision to make because to that end, that means that we're choosing efficiency over coverage.
Yeah.
And it manifests in so many ways. And I think in our city, we've traditionally sent buses to far corners of neighborhoods way out in everywhere. And I think, whenever we bring in new operators, they're like, we went on streets. I drove a bus down the street that I never knew existed. And so to that end, that's been the kind of system we have. So we generally have, we're sending stuff into residential single-family neighborhoods. We're not picking up a lot of density in there, but we are their lifeline to connect them to things. So that's why we have to look at our system now to see where there are redundancies. And if we have something, that one bus could, we have to just look at what we're spending on bus and rail. And I have to be very clear here because when we make decisions with bus, we've recently, you can see why people would think that we're squeezing the bus budget and giving it to rail. No, those are two separate things. And in fact, since Skyline has started, we've had a significant increase in the amount of bus service that we put on the road. So I want to disavow that narrative as hard as I can because that's the kind of stuff that generally pops up in the comments and people just assume that that's what it is, but absolutely untrue.
So to your question too, as we expand from where we are at the stadium, we're going to add 4 stations. At the airport, there's 15,000 employees at the airport. So we're reaching an area where there's a lot of people.
Skyline Yankees.
At Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, there's 19,000 people that are employed within that base, including over 6,000 in the shipyard alone, which is a real concentrated part of Pearl Harbor. When we get to Kalihi, there's lots and lots of jobs in Kalihi. So we're going to take our system finally, and we're going to put it to places where people actually have a reason to ride it, to get to their jobs, to do that. Other things that we're looking at doing, we've invested a lot in our holo technology, and we're really proud of it. But I made a commitment to the mayor. I might get fired over this, but I made a commitment that by the time we open our segment to the airport, we're going to change our holo system so that you can directly use your contactless credit card instead of having to get a special card for it. And we're going to do that because we're at the airport. And I don't want people to have to get a $2 card when they already have a card that works perfectly well. It's called their credit card. So we're gonna offer the same options that we have for that. You'll be able to transfer for free. You'll be able to we can cap our fare so that if you ride, you're not going to get charged anymore for that. But you're not going to have to get a special card. That's what JAL wants. That's what JCB wants for our Asian visitors. They want us to provide with them a convenient way for our visitors of the island to do it. And guess what? Our visitors ride in the opposite direction of most of our residents. So when our residents are coming into town in the morning for jobs, where are the visitors? They're going outbound to enjoy our beautiful island. And so we can do that at almost no cost to do that. We have a lot of visitors that use it already, but we're going to concentrate a little bit on that. But so the combination of just having more employment areas and more activities where people want to go to, along with our ability to market, we're going to spend a little bit of money when we open our second segment to try to do some traditional marketing and to offer some convenience factors for our customers.
And what's good for bus is good for Skyline. We have programmed, we have a request in to actually further increase our bus hours as we increase our bus service, as we increase our Skyline service. So we often feel that push-pull of people choosing to complain about column A or column B, right? So people are like, why are you even running this rail service at all? The ridership is bad. And then other people are saying, how come it doesn't run later?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have to kind of be the mediator of that. And all we can promise is that when we open segment 2, that the hours will be extended until much later. And I think that is something that I and many other people are looking forward to, because that kind of unfettered accessibility, that kind of free flow riding that you get on Skyline. I mean, on the socials, we have people who complain to the Oahu traffic groups, Honolulu traffic, this traffic, that traffic. They're complaining because, the state has to do road work or we have to do road work. And they're like, I'm stuck in this traffic again and the darn trains are just going over empty. And I'm like, okay, well, think about what you're saying there here. Insanity, what is insanity defined as? Doing the same thing over and over again. So to that end, we can promise more service, more frequency on our bus, which I think is king, where you can just go out and not have to look at a schedule. You'll know the bus is coming in a short amount of time. That is a huge, huge benefit to living more free or living more car light.
Okay, great.
Okay, we're going to move to audience questions, but I'm going to see if some audience questions pop up.
I've got a bunch.
You got them over there?
Okay. So some of these are pretty technical. I'm sorry. Some of these are pretty technical because these are obviously bus riders and transit riders. So this question is from the audience. When Skyline reaches City Center and is fully functional, what is your plan to transport riders to and from Alapa'i Transit Center, or will the transit center move to City Center? And I'm sorry.
Rapid bus connections. We understand. I know even Marcel took a little bit of a slight dig about what is called Civic Center. It is 3 blocks from Civic Center proper. So we do plan to have our rapid bus connections and frequent bus connections that will just take people who don't want to walk the 3 blocks, who take them to the Civic Center area where we have Honolulu Hale, Municipal Building, Queens Hospital, State Capitol, all of those destinations around all the state buildings that will connect them to the City Center segment stations. We've been focused a lot on Makai connections now, and how do we reinvigorate those? Our bus system was always designed to service the downtowns. We've always done east-west things. Now we're going more Makai.
Okay. Another quick one. If HECO is low on output and calls for rolling blackouts on Oahu, what is the policy for continued operation of the Skyline during those expected rolling blackouts?
First, with the public shutoff, criteria that Hawaiian Electric has, it really doesn't include the service area that Skyline is in. So we, number one, short of like an island-wide power outage, which we've all experienced at some point, so you can have catastrophe occur. Now, our system is built that if we do have an island-wide blackout, we do have backup power so that the trains that are in service can basically crawl back to the next station. But that's a very rare event. I think in my 50 years here, we've had like one hurricane event where we pretty much lost island-wide power. The way Hawaiian Electric does their power, they prioritize hospitals, they prioritize public transportation, they prioritize entities like that. And so in the event that we do have a power outage, there's nothing we can do if all the power goes out, obviously, but we anticipate that even if there was a massive power outage, that we would be one of the first to be restored.
And we also have, just in our operations plans, we have what we call bus bridge contingencies. And don't worry, we're not building a bridge for buses, but we are using buses to replace Skyline services in the alignment. Yep. And those are ready to go. As soon as any kind of disruption happens, we've already used buses to bridge between stations.
Next question.
I've got one. Here's a bit of a fastball because,
This is
right. Oh, sorry. I just lost my spot, but it was basically, here we go. So reliability was discussed earlier, and talking about how reliable the schedule has been. The way the questioner phrased it, if nobody is riding the rail, why is that metric even important?
Well, I mean, there's a certain truth to that.
First of all, I want to start with, who is nobody? And I even had to get into this in terms of messaging. People scream at us all the time. Our train goes from nowhere to nowhere. I find that very offensive. Why? Do you guys know anybody that lives west of Halava? People live in Aiea, Pro City, Waipahu, Central Oahu, Kapolei. And I think it's utterly elitist and offensive to say that our train goes nowhere. Because that nowhere that people talk about is some people's everywhere. So to call it nowhere to nowhere, I think is very offensive. And to say nobody is riding it. We have people, I just spoke of the people that rely on it every day. So to that end, I think, I just want to say that, we have to be careful when we couch things and say nobody is riding it.
But back to your question, there are two ways we can operate Skyline. We can operate it on a schedule, or we can operate it on a headway. A headway means we operate it every 10 minutes. A schedule means we operate it and it gets there at 10:01. Either way works. I mean, the reality is when we run the system every 10 minutes, even if we're not on schedule, and we're on schedule 99.2% of the time, but even if we're not on schedule, the trains run so frequently that from a customer's point of view, it's not extreme at all.
Does DTS plan on revising bus routes when segment 2 opens? And if so, which routes will be impacted and what services will be added to the system?
Absolutely.
What service will be added to the system?
Absolutely. We're looking at wholesale a lot of service changes. And in fact, we're trying to wrap those up now so we have over a year to communicate that to the public. And I will fall on the sword and say I think we sometimes don't do the best job of communicating our service changes to the public far in advance for people who have grown to rely on those services. So taking a very necessary step, we will finalize these changes that will have rapid bus rapid transit style services that operate frequently on headways, just like Skyline, deliver people to Skyline stations, and then on both ends of Skyline, we want to minimize waits. We don't want to have, major bus lines that you have to wait a half an hour for or 60 minutes for, but we want to have things that are more like 10, 15-minute connections on both sides of Skyline.
Okay. Here's a question that kind of touches on what we were talking about before. What is the economic reasoning for operating the train with very few passengers, especially after the morning rush? And it kind of gets to a question I was trying to phrase, which, you talk about the annual operation, 80 million, but you also talk about kind of the intangibles, Roger, what you call it, like it's a demonstration for the city. And I guess maybe another way to ask that question is the demonstration aspect and some of these other intangibles that you guys are talking about, is that ultimately worth kind of the 80 million in annual operations?
Well, you could look at it that way, and maybe, but the reality is that we're operating an automated train, and more than 70% of the costs are fixed. So the variable costs are to some, it's electricity is a variable cost. To some extent, the employment levels are variable costs, but most of our employment levels, we're not going to have employees that we give 3 hours of work to in the morning and then say go home. It's just not realistic that we would do that. We wouldn't have good employees, and we have really great employees. So I think the question really would be, do we operate it at all? Rather than let's operate it for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. That's a pretty useless system if we were to do that. So,
and I talked earlier about the agencies that have increased their ridership post-COVID. All of them have also concentrated more services through the midday instead of focusing on peak hour travels in the AM peak and the PM peak. They've kind of flattened those out and offered frequent services throughout the day. So that is a way to garner more ridership over time.
Now, a lot of things that people don't understand is we have a 13-year fixed price contract for operations.
So you have to go.
It's a long term. And really, when we get down to that, we tell our partners, hey, we're going to start operating on June the 1st. And that means that a year before that, they have to start worrying about hiring people and getting them trained and all of those kind of things. So these are not insignificant issues for.
They're not faucets we turn on and turn off.
Yeah, so I hear where people are coming from, but try walk into our shoes too, trying to figure out what's the best way that we could organize this.
Coming from a commuter standpoint, I was wondering is there a tipping point where your ridership reaches the point where people are really going to notice a difference on the road? Because I think that people are waiting for that, right?
Yeah.
They feel like that's what they paid for. Yeah.
Well, I think again, and this has sort of been the claim of some of the anti-rail people, is that even our studies show that the freeways will be congested, for some time, even if we have rail. But the reality is that we're going to be adding a huge number of additional trips to our system, and the question really is, what would our highways look like without rail? That's really the question: is what would they look like without rail? Because people are going to keep driving, and there's a tolerance level, right? Are you willing to, like, if you're coming from the west side, are you willing to put an hour and a quarter into your commute right now?
A variable hour and a quarter. It might be more on any given day.
But if we add all these units, are you willing to put in 2.25 hours? So that's the tipping point, is if you can come into town in an hour with a bus and a rail versus 2 hours because our highways are going to be so congested, that's the benefit. That's why I say, it's going to take until we build out all of these developments, because we have lots and lots of units that are permitted on the west side already that are going to build out. Build outs take decades. They don't happen overnight. And so this plan is really looking at how do we handle that as these units are built out over the next 20, the next 30. Rail this rail system we're building is built for the next 100 years. It's not built for the next 5 years. It's built for the next 100 years.
And I think, Kevin, one of the things I want to address, you asked about people who are kind of insinuating people are sitting in their cars waiting for relief. There are other commuters on the road too. There are people who already are on our transit buses. They're waiting for relief too, because they're sitting in that same mess.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out a way that we can offer an alternative, and I think that's the main word. I'm not investing in Skyline operations to say that I want everybody out of their cars. I want to give them an opportunity to get out of their car if they want, if it's better for them. If it's not, then they can choose to stay in their cars. But the fact is we don't have alternatives. You can sit on a bus in traffic, you can sit in your car in traffic, and that third option is not quite mature and available yet, but we're getting there.
And I just want to squeeze in, I think we have time for basically one more question, and it's kind of the flip side of, are we recouping enough costs for the operations? Somebody said, I heard that in Sydney, when they started rail, they made the first 3 years free. They said it was to get people to use it, or get people used to it, and to give up driving, and after 3 years, people were using it regularly and didn't go back to driving. Would Honolulu consider something similar?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Neither would I.
And
why not?
I think for a couple of reasons. One is, if you make it free, it's very hard to unfree it, especially if you do 3 years. It's very hard to unfree it. Second, I still believe that when people pay a fare, they're paying for the privilege of riding, and it becomes less of an entitlement and more of that. Our charge for us is to get this system so that all of you will ride it. We don't want to have a system where only those people that don't have money are going to use the system. And so that's just my personal philosophy.
And I think generally people don't appreciate things that we're asking them for. Again, we're in that tug of war between, do we charge what it costs us to run it, or do we charge,
the subsidized version.
Subsidized version.
Yeah.
And, to that end, I think people appreciate what they pay for more. I mean, if you've ever taken a free class versus a class you've paid for, I think there's a big difference in the output and the quality of what goes on in
And attendance, I'm sure.
And we might make some things like we did at the beginning. We might make we're thinking about making some holiday weekends free, because we want our residents to come out and actually have the opportunity to experience it. So we want to entice them. Hey, bring the family out, bring the keiki, go ride Skyline on a weekend, and we probably are going to do a little bit of that too, but not wholesale.
And we know the keiki. They're the ones who actually can envision a different future for themselves. And, you know, there's this one kid, opening weekend, I always remember, sat in the front of the train and was like, this is totally worth it. I don't know what everybody's complaining about.
Hey, one more, I'm sorry, and then we got to wrap it up. But this is a question from somebody who it kind of comes back to what John was talking about with the changes in the system that are coming. How are the people who use the bus regularly, how will they be able to contribute and voice their thoughts on route changes? And obviously that's important because you're talking about major changes, yeah?
Absolutely, and I'll say it again. We have not traditionally done changes very well in communication. We are going to be doing mobile neighborhood visits where we're going to detail these changes. But actually, when recently even, you know, we've been criticized for not doing proper outreach. And I asked the people that have that issue, how should we have reached out to you? And if I say, well, we did social media, we did, you know, these things, they're like, well, I don't use that. Okay, well, what do you use? And it's hard. I mean, I think we're at a hard place to get people to come out for a meeting. Definitely willing to do a hybrid in-person and Zoom meeting for these kinds of things, but we are going to go into people's neighborhoods and explain exactly how the service changes work. They'll be able to have some feedback. And we want this to be a super iterative process.
It does seem pretty clear that a lot of people really want that kind of access and that ability to give you feedback because if you depend on the bus, you really depend on the bus.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you very much, both of you, for your time today and for your responses. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.